It'll help you grow muscle and lose fat faster, it'll help you make more money, and it will literally help you live longer. The secret magic potion to all of these things is good sleep. So in this video, I'll be going over how we can improve our sleep so we can reap all of these benefits. So here's how I'll structure this video to cover this topic. First, I'll go over what I'll call the first like 80-ish%, and these are essentially just the tasks that will have the highest impact on improving your sleep and essentially help set you up to have good sleeping fundamentals. And then we'll move on to the remaining 20%, and these are essentially tips to min-max your sleep that you should do only after you've completed the first 80%. So let's get started with the first 80%. So the first thing we'll go over is basic sleep hygiene. These are essentially just like fundamental practices to make sure that your sleep schedule and sleep quality aren't like complete garbage. So for starters, you'll want to start off with 8 to 9 hours of sleep, and this means 8 to 9 hours of actual sleep time, not like 8 to 9 hours in bed, which means that you have to schedule more than 8 to 9 hours to get this like 8 to 9 hours of sleep, right? So for example, if I want to sleep for 8.5 hours for a night, then I will schedule 9 hours in bed. And so I'll schedule my bedtime to be like, let's say 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. And we have to include this buffer because of things like, the time it takes to actually fall asleep and potentially if you like wake up in the middle of the night and things like that, right? Next, you want to have a consistent sleep schedule. And this means going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time every single day, including the weekends. Not only does this let you have a regular routine to follow, this also greatly improves the quality of your sleep because not only do you want to sleep for 8 to 9 hours, you want to sleep well for those 8 to 9 hours. And so on the topic of having a consistent sleep schedule, what kind of dictates if you feel like sleepy or tired or like if you feel like awake in the morning is your circadian rhythm. And this is basically a biosystem in your body that essentially tells you when you should be like awake and active and doing things versus when you should be like, sleeping. So to help calibrate your circadian rhythm to your intended sleep schedule, you want to make sure to get sunlight in the morning as soon as possible after you wake up as you can. The morning sunlight essentially gives your body's like signals that it's like time to wake up and do things, right? On a nice sunny day, you really only need to be outside for maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, but any amount is great. And you do have to be outside compared to like looking at the sun through like a window or whatever. I think it's been scientifically like measured that it's only about like 50% as effective if you look at like the sunlight through a window, and it filters out other like beneficial like wavelengths of light that you would otherwise get if you were to be like actually outside in the actual sun. In a similar vein, you also want to watch the sunset in the evening to kind of help your body wind down and to let your body know that it's like almost bedtime. And so even if sunset is at like 6 p.m. and you go to bed at like 11 p.m. and this might seem like a little counterintuitive to wind down for like 5 hours before your bedtime, you should still try and watch the sunset if you can, as it'll help like concrete your circadian rhythm and improve your sleep. So doing these things, getting sunlight in the morning as well as in the evening to set your circadian rhythm, is a super easy habit to implement and has a huge impact on your sleep quality as well as your general overall health. Generally, you also want to sleep alone. Although it is nice to sleep with someone, doing so could really like affect your sleep quality because they have so much potential to either like, snore or like steal the blankets or like move in their sleep. There's just like so many things that they could do to kind of disturb your sleep quality. And I've experienced this personally. Even if I do get like a good 7 to 9 hours of sleep sleeping with someone, I still feel a lot more tired during the day compared to if I were to get like the same amount of sleep but like sleeping alone. Brian Johnson is that like one tech almost like billionaire who's trying to live as long as possible, and obviously like sleep is a really important aspect to his overall health and to living as long as possible, right? And he also emphasizes sleeping alone to optimize sleep quality. Next, you want to stop any liquid consumption around 2 hours before bed. I used to always have to wake up in the middle of the night to pee, and this can really have like a bigger effect on your sleep quality than you think, because not only are you like waking up in the middle of the night, there's also like a pretty big risk of like you not being able to fall back asleep for like a good amount of time, right? And like that obviously decreases your like total sleep duration. And so once I stopped drinking any liquids around 2 hours before bed, I didn't have to like wake up in the middle of the night to pee anymore, and that kind of just like solved that issue completely. You also don't want to consume any large meals 3 to 4 hours before bed, because digestion takes a lot of your body's resources, and you don't want this process going on while you're asleep because your body needs to use these resources to kind of help itself recover and like rebuild itself for the next day. Brian Johnson, again, he stops eating, I think, around 11 hours before his bedtime. And this is pretty extreme, but it kind of just shows the importance of kind of letting your body like use its resources to recover and not for like digestion while you're asleep. You also want to stop all caffeine consumption at least 10 hours before bed. I go to bed at around 11 p.m., so I have a pretty strict non-negotiable caffeine cutoff at around 1 p.m. You also want to minimize blue light exposure around 1 hour before bed, and this blue light comes from like things like screens, like your laptop, your phone, etc. And this might seem kind of unrealistic, but it has a pretty big impact on your sleep quality. But if you do absolutely need to use your phone or your laptop or some screen before bed, just use like a blue light filter that you can like turn on your phone, or like use like blue light blocking glasses that you can get for like, I don't know, $10 on Amazon. And if you absolutely must use your screens before bed, don't do anything really stimulating, because this will excite your brain and make it a lot harder for you to fall asleep. If this video has been helpful to you so far, please hit that like and subscribe button so that this video can reach more people and it'll help more people. Thanks. You also want to keep your room cool at around, I think 67 degrees Fahrenheit is the ideal temp for most people. This might seem kind of cold, but it's been scientifically proven that you'll probably have better quality sleep in a colder environment. And this kind of makes sense in my head too, because if you imagine like during the wintertime when it's pretty cold, but then you can kind of get into your like nice and warm and cozy bed, then like it'll be a really nice cozy feeling sleep and you'll probably sleep pretty well. So those are some pretty purely logistical changes that you can make to really improve your sleep, and a lot of these are like really easy things to do and will have a pretty big impact on your sleep quality, so I heavily recommend that you do these things. And a quick note, one more thing, you want to be active enough so you're actually tired when bedtime rolls around, and this is a pretty big thing that will both help you fall asleep faster and help you sleep better. And this just means that you're working your body and your brain hard enough during the day so that you're like physically and mentally tired during the night, so you can like really recover. Next up, I'll go over some pieces of gear, which are just like some things that you can just buy that will help you improve your sleep. So the first and biggest impact thing is mouth tape. This is essentially like medical micropore tape that you like take a small piece of and you put over your mouth. And doing so not only prevents you from eating spiders during your sleep, but it will also kind of prevent you from mouth breathing and force you to nose breathe. Mouth breathing in itself is pretty bad for you and for your overall health, but specific to sleep, mouth breathing can cause things like sleep apnea and excessive snoring. And getting rid of both of these things by forcing yourself to nose breathe will greatly improve your quality of sleep. It might feel weird in the beginning to have a piece of tape over your mouth while you sleep, but you'll eventually get used to it. And like, it's not like you won't be able to like suffocate or anything, because it's literally just like a piece of tape. And like, if you absolutely need to breathe, you can just like open your mouth, right? And again, this is like micropore medical 3M tape, and you can get a box of like, I think 36 for like $12 on Amazon. So it's super affordable, and I would greatly recommend this to everyone. Next up is an eye mask. This essentially lets you sleep in complete pitch black darkness. You won't get disturbed by any like random bright lights or like light pollution, and you'll probably just like sleep much better in like the pitch black as opposed to just like a mostly dark room. Again, this is super affordable. It's like 10 to 15 bucks on Amazon for one of these sleeping masks. And again, it might take you a few days to kind of get used to wearing it during your sleep, but in the long run, it'll increase your quality of sleep. And so that's like obviously very worth it. Alternatively, you can also get blackout curtains. I think these are more expensive and you also have to like set them up in your room, but they offer like a similar functionality in making your room completely pitch black. The last piece of equipment I use when I sleep are these foam earplugs. I essentially use them to block out any like random noises that can happen during the night and potentially disturb my sleep. And this is especially useful if you're a light sleeper and can wake up to like anything. So that covers the first 80%, which are again things that have the biggest impact on your sleep. Next, I'll go over the remaining 20%. Again, make sure you do the first 80% before you kind of get into these. So the first thing is to get a sleep tracker, and this is something like an Apple Watch, an Oura Ring, or a Whoop band. So what this does is help track how long you're actually asleep, and it also tracks how long you're within like the 3 different stages of sleep. So like it tracks how long you're in light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. And this is really useful because you'll be able to find out how long you're actually asleep and like essentially how well you're actually sleeping. And by being able to see how long you're within like these 3 stages of sleep, you can kind of like adjust your sleep habits to kind of improve your sleep. So for example, for deep sleep and REM sleep, you're supposed to be in these 2 stages for about 20 to 25% of your sleep each. And so if you're like significantly lower than that in like, for example, deep sleep, right? Then you can kind of like look up like what will help me improve my deep sleep and implement these changes. And in doing so, you're like greatly improving your quality of sleep. And you would never have been able to even like find out that you're like lacking in deep sleep if you didn't have like a sleep tracker. So they're very useful, but they're a little more pricey. And this is kind of why they're in like the remaining 20%. Next is to have a solid morning routine. This is a video about sleep, but the purpose of sleep is to make sure that you feel great like during the day, right? And so having a morning routine will have a pretty big impact on how you feel during the day. So for my personal morning routine, I wake up, I like brush my teeth, do my skincare, and then I get sunlight, and then I meditate, and then I also read. Now, things like meditation and reading are all like very good for you, and I would heavily recommend you do these things. But to be honest, the biggest impact things that you can do to kind of make sure that you feel great during the day are to 1, get your morning sunlight, 2, make sure you're not on your phone like immediately right after you wake up, and 3, get out of your bed like as soon as possible, like right after you wake up, so you're not like lying in bed and just like, I don't know, just lying there doing nothing, right? So as long as these 3 things are in your morning routine, then you'll probably be pretty well off. Next up, we have caffeine optimization. We already went over that we shouldn't drink any caffeine around 10 hours before you go to bed. But another thing is to make sure that you wait 60 to 90 minutes after you wake up before you drink your first cup of coffee or your first cup of tea. Waiting to drink caffeine in the morning essentially helps prevent the crash that people normally get when they drink caffeine. I would also try experimenting with different kinds of caffeine. There's like coffee, tea, matcha, yerba mate. I personally find matcha to be a lot more like smooth and a lot more of a drawn out like I guess energy wave than coffee. Next, you want to have either a warm or a cold shower before bed. The point of this is to help your body wind down and relax before bed. And the reason I say either a warm or a cold shower is because some people relax better with a warm shower, while others kind of like sleep better if they have like a cold shower before bed. So I would just recommend kind of trying both and see what works better for you. Finally, you want to get a temperature controlled mattress. This is a pretty big investment, but it's very worthwhile in my opinion. We already went over that sleeping at around 67 degrees Fahrenheit is like ideal for a good sleep, but having a temperature controlled mattress kind of ensures that like your whole sleeping environment, including the bed, is like constantly at this temperature. So that covers my sleep guide on how I improve my sleep. If this has been helpful to you, please like or subscribe so that I can help more people. You can also join my Discord, and if you want to work with me one-on-one, you'll find more information about that in the description below. But other than that, thank you for watching and have a good day. Bye-bye.